to hear the horror stories of other tenants, a 76-year-old Bronx veteran being displaced from his home at another building was just so heartbreaking. So I'm glad I was able to bring a spotlight to what was going on, and hopefully it'll work out for everybody that's involved.
This man does not need an introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyways. He is the legendary photographer that captured the early days of hip hop. His book, Born in the Bronx, the visual record of the early days of hip hop, just got re-released. He is a first responder September 11th as an EMT in the fire department, now retired. Our families have been attached at the hip for almost 60 years through community activism, community development, social service, civil service, and art, visual art, music, and
growing pains as families and neighbors.
We've been through all of it, right? He's an uncle to me, Bronx born, Bronx raised, the one, the only, Joe Conzo. What's going on, man?
Peace, Rich. How's everything? I'm doing okay, one day at a time.
During the pandemic, how has the lockdown affected you? What are some of the adjustments that you had to make, during that time?
I had a head start on everybody else. I retired from the fire department in 2018. So I was already used to being at home, doing my own schedule. And, if you want to call it a lockdown, I had already been used to it. From my medical background as an EMT, I myself had, along with my coworkers, had been through these past pandemics that we've had: Ebola, H1N1, swine flu, and so I knew what to expect. I did not know that it would end up in this proportion that we're going through now for over a year. And being a cancer survivor, my adjustment, I had to pretty much limit my, going outside and to events and things of that nature. And so I was kind of used to it already, but it took a little toll on me, like everybody else, because it's not just about me. It's my family also. I'm married 22 years, I have a daughter, I have a son, I have, a couple of grandchildren. So the worry on top of all of that, it takes a toll. It takes a toll. In the beginning of the pandemic, my wife, Samantha, who's an essential worker at Jacoby Hospital, she came down with COVID. And thank God she didn't display any signs of symptoms, and isolated, and we dealt with that, and it came and went. But she was one of the first to get vaccinated, which was great. Fire department got me vaccinated because I'm a retiree with underlying conditions. But it's been a struggle, more of a mental kind of struggle than physical, because physically I was used to being home and making up my own schedule prior to the pandemic. But it takes a toll. It takes a toll. And that feeling of helplessness. You see all of your coworkers, the EMTs and paramedics, and ER doctors that going through all of this craziness. And, part of me wanted to be out there and helping. Part of me is like, Joe, you can't. So, just like anybody else, it was a struggle. It's been a struggle. It still is a struggle.
So since you brought up having like that helplessness that you felt, and being, a retired member of the fire department, EMT, what were your thoughts when the pandemic started to unfold about, maybe the people that that are still on the job, your concerns for them, and things of that nature?
My last position with the fire department, I was the vice president of my union. So I represented over 4,000 EMTs and paramedics in New York City. So I had that extra vested interest in their welfare and their well-being. I think there's a total of 14 EMTs and paramedics that have succumbed to the pandemic in the last year and a couple of months, which is heartbreaking because I knew a handful of them. What's even more heartbreaking is that the pandemic exposed the inadequacies of the system that they claim was broken. And this is something that I had been screaming for years. The system has been broken for years, especially for minorities. Okay. So why did it take a pandemic to expose the system being broken when it was broken prior to the pandemic? It's still broken. And it's just a shame that my members and also my community had to go through this to expose this inadequacy in the system, especially here in the Bronx. So it was heartbreaking. I did some interviews. I worked the phones. I offered my services to people that I still knew in the higher ups in the fire department, and I needed to be involved, whether that was making phone calls, doing interviews, exposing, some of the faults that were going on, and nothing less than short of me getting on an ambulance and treating patients. But it's been heartbreaking. It's been heartbreaking.
Being that you've paid close attention throughout this process, what are some of the things that you've seen from the start up to this point that the system has gotten better at?
I don't know if we've gotten better at it. It's been exposed more, the system, because of the pandemic. I mean, our communities are still being ravaged with the pandemic. New York State, we're still seeing high numbers of exposures. My members are being worked to the bone in terms of working 12-hour shifts, days in and days, my members are still getting sick. We've kind of gotten a hold on what's going on, but it doesn't mean that the dam won't break again. My EMTs and paramedics are some of the lowest, they are the lowest paid uniform services in New York City. And my members are leaving in droves, leaving EMS in the fire department to work other agencies because of, why am I going to risk my life for such low pay? And that's another whole interview, lecture series, this, that, and the other. But it's like, I'm still going to touch on it. EMS, my members, are mostly colored, brown and black people, minorities and women. And yet the fire department firefighters are 93% Caucasian. And it's a shame that after 20 years of being forced into the fire department, under Giuliani's shotgun wedding. The police department was housing, transit, and regular PD. They were all merged into one agency. EMS was under health and hospitals. We were merged into the fire department. And after 20 years, we're still treated like redheaded stepchildren. But getting back to the system is still broke. The healthcare system in general is broken. You know, ERs are used as clinics and not used as emergency rooms, where, you know, people should be, you know, going there for emergencies and not for checkups. But that's just one part of the problem. You know, there's 4,000 EMTs and paramedics that respond to 1.5 million 911 calls a year. Do the math. You know, the fire department, firefighters, there's 15,000, almost 20,000 firefighters that respond to maybe 200,000 fires a year. The Bronx isn't burning anymore. You know, there aren't, I mean, yes, there's fires going on, people are dying, but not at the rate that when I grew up, when your parents grew up. But yet all the resources are put into suppression, the firefighter side, and not the resources that are needed the most in terms of EMS, emergency medical services. So, you know, it just breaks my heart that that I see this on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, it scares me that we're going to see an uptick or another, you know, spike in COVID now that the summer warmer weather is coming and people are getting complacent and comfortable and not doing the right thing. You know, being an EMT paramedic for 27 years, you know, I was used to washing my hands and social distancing and, you know, protecting myself just because of the 911 calls that I do on a daily basis for all those years. So it was nothing new to me when, you know, when this all first hit the fan.
People always say that, you know, this election is the most important election, you know, in our lifetime.
Which election? The presidential election?
The city election for mayor, for comptroller, you know, the citywide election for the city council. And as a former leader of the union, right? You know, what are some of the things that a union rep or union leader would have to articulate in order for, you know, these concerns to be taken serious for, you know, frontline workers?
Well, I mean, listen, you know, the blood that runs through my veins, it's the same blood that runs through your veins. Our parents shed blood in the streets of the Bronx in New York City for all kinds of causes, but basically for the biggest cause of all, basic human rights, basic human decency for the people of the Bronx, the people of New York City, and for the people of Puerto Rico. Okay, that's the lineage, the bloodline that you and I come from. And as a union leader, I always respected the unions because we are there to represent the workers, the frontline workers in my case. But unions could be, I don't know, for lack of better words, assholes also. You know what I mean? But overall, we do good things. First thing we need to do for these citywide elections is elect somebody with cojones. Pretty much, cojones. And there aren't that many people around today that have a pair of cojones. You know what I mean? And I'm not to put down anybody in politics today, but you know, the days of our parents and grandparents are gone. You know what I mean? They would stand, you know, My grandmother used to say this all the time, and she'd tell all the politicians, along with your grandmother, you don't, we don't work for you. You work for us. You do for us first, then we'll do for you. You don't see that today. Okay. Getting back to the city elections, I need somebody with cojones to stop this practice, so to speak, and stand up and, treat my members or the people of the city with dignity and respect. And listen to the unions, especially my union, and not cave into other unions. So I know for a fact that my members have been without a contract now for over 4 years, 5 years, which is the norm. That is the norm. Most city workers, most unions go years and years waiting for contracts to be signed. And I need that practice to stop. I need my members to be paid a comparable rate to other EMTs and paramedics in the surrounding counties and states. Okay? There's such a disparity. We wear a uniform, we wear bulletproof vests, but yet the top pay of an EMT is $50,000 and the top pay of a paramedic is $65,000. You can't live in New York, and we must live in New York City. Unlike the other police department, sanitation, corrections, they're allowed to live outside the city. What's been the norm in my tenure as a city worker is that everybody wants what the next person is getting. So, my members are constantly pointing towards PD, the police department, and what they make. PD is constantly pointing to corrections and what they make. Corrections is constantly pointing to the firefighters and what they make. And everybody's pointing towards what sanitation makes. So you're never going to be happy. You're never going to be happy. I've been able to supplement my income because of my love and passion of photography. And that's what most city workers do. They supplement their income with a second job. And they do what they do because they love it. But, with these citywide elections coming up, is just, I need somebody to take it back to the old days, get old school, and tell people where to go and treat people with human dignity and respect. Pretty much.
Talking about other issues that have been going on that you have been outspoken about, you've made the news recently with the management company of your residents, Glacial Equities, inexplicably sent out eviction notices before Christmas.
90 vacate notices. Leases weren't going to be renewed, and this was 2 days before Christmas. So you can imagine Christmas came and went in this household. But not only for me, it was over 220 different families. So Glacial Equities. Okay.
So the thing that I don't understand, that a management company would do something, especially, with the pandemic going on and the moratorium about evictions, right? That has been extended multiple times. And I know I saw that after the notices went out, the state extended the moratorium until I think this summer. So, I mean, what happened? What's going on there?
So, I mean, listen, it comes down to basically gentrification. Okay. Before your time, because I'm a little bit older than you, during my time when the Bronx was burning, landlords would burn the buildings and collect insurance money and take that insurance money and move down to Florida or wherever they went. And, us black and brown people mostly were left to fend for ourselves. Okay. Now in the 21st century, you have these equity groups who are buying up real estate in New York City that is a hot commodity. It is one of the hottest commodity going on, especially now during the pandemic, because a lot of people are leaving. I mean, before the pandemic, it was a hot commodity. You couldn't buy in Harlem anymore. You couldn't buy in Brooklyn. You couldn't buy anywhere. You have these high rises going on down in Sobro, Sobro. And, here comes this equity group, Glacial Equities, who saw an opportunity to invest $23 million and buy over 220 unowned cooperative apartments in a portfolio of 9 buildings scattered in the Bronx and in Washington Heights. And when it was big news in November, and this equity group just saw an opportunity to make some money because the South Bronx, they're building down there. So where's the next place? The North Bronx.
So wait,
Uptown.
hold on. Let me get this straight. So they weren't buying the property, right? They were buying
unowned apartments. So I live in a cooperative building. It's been a co-op building since 1989. Up until this, I knew shit about it. I mean, I knew shit about real estate. I could save a life and deliver a baby, but I didn't know the difference between rent stabilization, rent control, co-op, cooperative, this and the other. But, after all of this, I did my research. So this equity group went and bought up a majority shareholders share of apartments that were unowned in these cooperative buildings. So by becoming the majority owner of these apartments, you can pretty much do what the fuck you want. I never had the interest into purchasing my apartment, my 2 apartments. Prior to that letter, we had gotten letters that the building was under new management and there was a new owner for the cooperative apartments, and that was Glacial Equities. Didn't think nothing of it. You know what I mean? Real estate changes hands all the time. But it was 2 days before Christmas where the new management company sent out these letters to the tenants that our leases weren't being renewed and we had 90 days to vacate. And I was like, fuck. There's a pandemic going on. I just, stopped taking chemo for my liver and pancreatic cancer that I'm in remission for due to 9/11. It's cold outside. What am I going to do? I have a family. And then the activism and hell no, we won't go. Pa arriba, pa abajo, los Yankees pa'l carajo came out of me. And I started emailing everybody that I knew. Emailed all these politicians and news outlets and this, that, and the other. And, the Norwood newspaper, the local newspaper, caught wind of it and did an interview. And then it just grew and grew and grew. And next thing you know, I'm on the front page of the Daily News advocating for all these people, reaching deep down inside of me and conjuring up the spirits of my grandmother, my mother, and, your family and all the social activism that we grew up in. And put Glacial Equities on notice. And next thing you know, they came to the table and apologize on TV, apologize to the newspapers, and more importantly, apologize to the tenants that nobody was being evicted. And we'd like to work with each and every tenant. And it was a learning experience. So we're not being evicted. Glacial Equities came to the table and was working with each and every tenant and working out a solution, whether it is to purchase your apartment or to obtain some sort of buyout. And it's still going on, negotiations, so to speak. But they have Glacial Equities has dialed back the rhetorics, and it's working with the tenants. So I'm happy to report that there are negotiations going on and people aren't being evicted because there is a moratorium that's going on. By the time they get to us, it'll probably be 2 years down the road because that's how backlogged the court system is. But it was definitely an educating experience to go through. And, I'm at an age, I'm 58, I'm a young 58. I want to enjoy my retirement, but, to hear the horror stories of other tenants, a 76-year-old Bronx veteran being displaced from his home at another building was just so heartbreaking. So I was, I'm glad I was able to bring a spotlight to what was going on, and hopefully it'll work out for everybody that's involved.